What is up, my maintenance brothers and sisters? I am Jack Schwent, the maintenance supervisor here at Oak Tree Village in Portage, Indiana. Today we have an introduction to electrical video. We will be discussing some of the safety measures we need to take when dealing with electricity. We'll also talk about some of the fundamentals of electricity and how it works. And then we'll also dive in and we'll install a switch as well as a receptacle outlet. So let's go ahead, let's get in there and have some fun. All right, welcome back to the shop. To start, electricity can be very dangerous. However, if we're all using the proper safety procedures and equipment, that's going to ensure less risk and the completion of the job without any issues. Now, when doing work on anything powered by electricity, the first thing you want to do is remove the power source. For example, if we have to switch out an outlet, you want to find the breaker that corresponds to that outlet, turn it off, and then do a lockout tagout. Basically, that's going to ensure that that breaker doesn't get turned back on while you're in there doing the work. Once you're turned off, go back to your outlet, test for power. Make sure that that breaker was indeed the correct one to turn off your outlet. If you've got no power, you're good to move forward and swap it out. Another note to make is appliances. All appliances are plugged into the wall. They have power. Even a gas oven is going to have electrical components to it. So if you have to change any parts on appliances, be sure to unplug them first. Some of the equipment you're going to want for basic electrical duties, you're going to want a set of electrical insulated screwdrivers. You're going to want wire cutters and strippers. You're going to want a multimeter so that you can test for voltage. Again, make sure that you have power or don't have power. You're always going to want your clear eye protection. And then you're also going to want that lockout tagout kit that we had just spoke about. And that's pretty much all the equipment you'll need, as well as a couple of safety procedures you want to make sure to follow when doing basic electrical. So we've talked about some basic safety procedures we all need to be doing on every electrical job. We've talked about some basic equipment we'll need in order to do those jobs. So let's do a basic overview of electricity and how it works. For me, it's easiest to think of electricity and visualize electricity as a fluid flowing through these electrical lines to create a current. Now in electricity, we have two types of current. We have alternating current and direct current. Direct current is going to flow in one direction always, kind of like a river flowing downstream. And then alternating current, the flow is actually going to go both directions, almost like the tide going up and down. Now electricity will only flow when it's a complete circuit. Your body, if it comes in contact with an electrical conductor or power source, it can complete that circuit. That's when you run the risk of getting shocked or injured. And also why we talked about in the safety procedure, removing the power source before we even get started. Lastly, electricity is always going to try to find its way back to its source. And it's going to do so on the path with the least resistance. Ultimately, I think we've covered enough to kind of get our hands dirty. Install these outlets and switches real quick, and I'll explain some more along the way. Okay, today we're going to start with installing the outlet. Just a couple visual things to look at here on the outlet. On one side, you're going to have silver screws. Those are for your neutral wire, your white wire. On the other side, you're going to have brass screws. Those are going to be for your hot wire, your black. And then on the bottom, you're going to have a green screw, which is for your ground wire, your exposed wire right here. Now before we install this, we've already turned off our circuit breaker for this outlet. We've locked out, tagged out, and then we've also tested to make sure we have no power here. So we've got no power, we are good to install. Now for the sake of the video, I already created these shepherd hooks for my wires. The reason I did those is one, I don't like using the push connect option on the back. And two, I wanted to show you that if you create these shepherd hooks and install them the wrong way, correct way, wrong way, it's simply that if I were to screw this down, as I tighten it, it's going to want to open that shepherd's hook. So a simple way to remember it is on the left side of an outlet, you want the shepherd's hook pointing towards the top. On the left side of the outlet, you want the shepherd's hook pointing towards the bottom. That way, as you tighten it, it is going to actually close that hook just a little bit as opposed to spreading it. It's just going to save you from fighting it down the line. Now up top, we don't have any wires to go there. If we did, they would just be wires that are a load, sending power down the line to another outlet. We don't have that, so we're just gonna cinch those up, that way they're out of the way. We're gonna hook up our neutral to the silver over here. Nice and tight, we wanna have good connections. Last is gonna be our ground to our green. So ground's on the left side. I created that shepherd hook to where it was pointing down. That way, as you tighten these up, it's just cinching those. And at this point, we've got everything connected, no loose screws. You're okay to then put your outlet back in your box, screw it down. Next, we will be installing a switch. Just some visuals here. We've got a green screw that we know is for our ground. And on the other side, we've got two brass, one of which is going to be for your hot wire. The other is for your switch leg, which we'll get into here in a second. Now, before we start, we've already turned off our breaker, we've locked out, tagged out, and we've tested. We have no power here. So a little visual is coming into our box from our breaker. We've got a hot, we've got our neutral, which doesn't get connected to the switch. It actually then continues up to your light fixture, and then we've got our ground. Now, coming back from the light fixture, we've got a ground, we've got a switch leg, and then again, your neutral, which then goes all the way back to your breaker. So when installing, first we'll do our grounds. You're gonna want to twist your grounds together and leave just a little bit long on one side. That way you can create your shepherd's hook. If we look at the orientation of our switch, left side is our ground, so we are going to be turning our hook down. You can hook that up real quick. And then I was telling you the orientation for the hot and the switch leg. The best way to look at that is in the off position, it's going to point to which one's going to be your hot, so the bottom one. And then in the on position, it's going to point to which one is going to be your switch leg, which will be the top one. So off down is going to be our hot, and we're on the right side, so we're going to point our shepherd's hook up to the sky, hook that guy up. And then in the on position, that's pointing up, so we know that's for our switch leg. We're still on the right side, so we're going to point our shepherd's hook up and then connect that. Again, make sure you're securing these well. You don't want loose connections. All right, everything's nice and tight, no loose screws. Now, before we set this in the box, you can see we've got a metal box here. You want to wrap your switch or outlet, if they're going into a metal box, to cover your screws as well as any exposed wire. The reason you want to do this is when you go to put your switch in your box, you don't want the chance of those screws or exposed wire connecting with that metal box and creating a short circuit and either shocking you or popping the breaker or whatever the case may be. Again, you shouldn't have power on here, so you shouldn't have to worry about it. But even once it's in the box, things move around sometimes. Once power is restored, you don't want them to be able to touch the sides. But that's it. Go ahead and set this guy in, screw her down, put your plate on, and you're good to go. Great job. All right, yes heads, that is a wrap. Today in this video, we did a very basic introduction into electrical. In doing so, we briefly talked about how electricity works, some of the safety measures we need to take when tackling these tasks, as well as the quick install on the switch and outlet. Now, my email's in the description below as always. Reach out to me directly if you have any further questions. Also, leave a comment down below with what your tips and tricks may be when it comes to these electrical tasks. And as always, I'm gonna ask you, plan, execute, measure, and adjust. I'll catch you in the next one.